Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Crown and today we are going to have some more stories that I hope that you will enjoy. But before we start, it will be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go! First story. Take my disabled mom's parking spot? Think again. This is my mom's story, but she doesn't use Reddit, so I'll post it on her behalf. Some information about my mom. She's very caring and kind, but not someone you want to mess with. She can and will kick your butt, be it with words or pettiness. She's also pretty severely disabled. Because of this, she always has a designated handicapped parking space when she lives in apartment buildings. This incident happened at her previous apartment. My mom's spot was the second one, so there were two other spots on either side of her. It's one she paid monthly for. The parking lot had the 4th and 5th closest spots as a guest handicapped parking. One frequent visitor of her building would constantly take my mom's paid parking spot when the guest spots were readily available. Also worth noting that they never had a disabled parking placard on display to even be allowed to park there. My mom left a polite note on their windshield the first few times it happened, but she quickly realized that it was becoming routine. It happened so often that my mom would be left without her spots for 10 hours at a time. She tried getting it towed, but the companies all insisted my mom would have to pay, and she did not want to do that. Finally, getting fed up with it, she parked her car immediately behind the person who was knowingly and routinely taking her paid spot when there was one available just 2 spots over. With her balcony overlooking the parking lot, she got a book and waited. The person came out and was pissed. They tried waiting to see if my mom would come out, but she just watched from the balcony instead. They tried using an empty space beside them to get out, but that didn't work. Finally, they tried to plow through my mom's car, but with dozens of witnesses and reports about the driver illegally parking there, she was forced to pay a hefty fine and the repairs on my mom's car. She was also banned from visiting the apartment building. My mom had been planning to get a new car anyways, so the damage wasn't that big of a deal. Just do not mess with my mom and her parking spots. Next story. My school denied me, so I sued them. A little about me. I have a service dog for my PTSD and at the time was in 6th grade. At the time, I had just gotten my service dog and was going to school when I contacted the school to inform them that I was bringing my service dog in. They flat out refused to let my service dog in the school, which where I live, it is illegal to deny a service animal access to somewhere without a good reason. So for months after that, I continued in that school without my service dog, which was very hard because he would also help me to stop inflicting self-harm. So after the initial denial, I was constantly bullied because of it, not just by the students, but by the teachers as well, and after one day, after months of this, I snapped from one teacher comment who said I will amount to nothing in life. After that day, I told my parents what was going on along with most of my classmates, saying what the teachers and other students had said behind my back because I needed a service dog. They were furious. They ended up contacting the Human Rights Tribunal, who took the case and they sued the school for discrimination. We ended up winning the lawsuit and now the school is in threat of closing down. I later found out that the teacher that was bullying me the most got fired. In other words, do not mess with a disabled kid. Next story. Entitled Mother Thinks We Control the Weather. I was formerly employed at a large Orlando, Florida theme park. You know, the one with the mouse. Backstory. This takes place in the middle of July, and if you've ever been in Central Florida in the summer, You know, it rains pretty much every single day between 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. In my role, I carry the radio like a walkie-talkie. This day, I'm in one of the parks going to a location to perform my job, and as I'm walking through the park, the sky is open. I mean, it's like buckets of water being poured out on you. I enter the location and see lots of people in ponchos and rain parkas standing around. I rarely perform my duties in the parks when they are open. When I do have to go to the parks, I usually walk with my head down hoping no guests stop me. However, this was not the case on this day. Here comes the entitled mother. She walks up to me madder than a hornet. She stands in front of me huffing and puffing and demands to know when the rain is going to stop. This is how the exchange took place.
Sir, when is this rain going to stop? My children would like to enjoy some game in the park.
Ma'am, I cannot be certain, but there are storms usually in this area every day.
You are ruining my kids' vacation.
Excuse me, ma'am?
I saved for years to bring them here, and all it does is bleep in rain? This is all your fault.
Ma'am, there isn't anything we can do about the weather. This is where she goes off the rails.
Nonsense. I know you have some kind of way to stop the weather if you want. You people are just understaffed and cannot accommodate the people here.
I can assure that is far from the case, ma'am. We want all of our guests to have the best time. Because if you don't, you won't come back and visit us again. You guys are the reason we are here. Then she gets in my face, nose to nose, and says,
Go screw yourself. Make it stop raining. Get on your little radio and you better call someone to find something out.
Let's just say I'm not the most patient person in the world then. I could feel the anger boiling inside of me. I had to disengage myself from the psycho entitled mother, or I would lose it in my job. When there are really bad thunderstorms, like the one we're experiencing that day, we will get random weather updates on our radios. Just then, the alert sound for an impending weather update came over my radio. I excused myself from the entitled mother and stepped away to listen to the weather update. The person said the thunderstorm would exit property around 4:35 p.m. I returned to the entitled mother and said this in the most sarcastic way I could, knowing that I will probably get in some kind of trouble for this. Ma'am, I just spoke to the clouds, and they said the rain will be gone by 4:35 p.m. Shockingly, the entitled mother looked at me and said,
Thank you.
I just stood there with my mouth open, and I took this as a sign for me to exit the scene. Flash forward about an hour and I'm still in this park. The rain had stopped and the sun was back out and it was humid as all hell. Just out of the corner of my eye I spot the entitled mother and she is making a beeline straight for me. I think to myself, great, it was nice working here. And she tells me,
Thank you for calling someone so they would make it stop.
Huh?
I know you guys could turn that off.
You're welcome, ma'am. I walked back to my work truck laughing the entire way. Next story. Peep peep, under the bus you go. Bob was a back-of-store lead hand for a retail store, along with his colleague Larry. He made sure that shipments and deliveries were scheduled and handled correctly, that the crew out back were doing their jobs, and that the restocks for front of store were picked correctly. His assistant manager, Frank, had resigned and Bob had applied for the job. Bob had been handling many of the Frank's duties, particularly those that involve computers. Since Frank was older and not very adept with a keyboard and mouse, Bob did not get the job. Instead, they brought in Richard, an assistant manager from another store, and Bob had worked with him in the past. He was a jerk and had once thrown Bob under the bus for one of his own mistakes, causing Bob to get yelled at on the floor in front of his colleagues, then hauled into the manager's office to get written up. Bob was thinking of quitting anyway, but getting turned down for the assistant manager position and then seeing Richard roll in, that was a straw that broke the camel's back. One thing that pertinent is that Larry, his colleague, was a Harley-riding biker type. He wasn't a member of a club but enjoyed riding, and did charity rides and stuff like that. He also, every year for a decade, went to Sturgis, South Dakota, for the annual rally in August. So Bob decided to submit his resignation, effective the day after Larry left for his trip. He did this by attaching a PDF of his resignation to a bunch of reports and requested the read receipt. Bingo! Richard clicked read, and Bob printed it out. The schedule for the warehouse crew was posted online on a web-based scheduling app with the admin account under Assistant Manager at store.com. This was store policy. All emails were created as job title at, and when a person left a position, the password was changed, and this way nobody had to change their contact information. They were communicating with the job title and not the individual. IT had a list of logins for every position and changed password with every transition, so the outgoing person could not sabotage things. Bob had asked Richard repeatedly for his password to the scheduling site and never got an answer. So Larry worked the Thursday and headed out. Bob worked Friday, his last day, and before he left he told his crew to make certain they checked the scheduling app and worked their scheduling hours. Then he went home and shut off his work phone. On Monday before opening he showed up to turn in his phone and his keys to be greeted by Richard losing his mind. The store manager corralled both of them and took them to his office. Richard went on a tear, describing the crazy show that happened over the weekend. How Bob was incommunicado, Richard had to come in and piss on fires, and demanded that Bob be written up. Bob let him go on, and the store manager said, "Bob, what have you got to say about this?" "Well, a write-up is a disciplinary action for an employee, right?" "Yes. It's going to be hard to make that stick, since I'm not an employee." Bob had a folder and pulled out a printed copy of his resignation, showing that the previous Friday was his last day, and the store manager read it, then handed it to Richard. Richard said, "You never sent this to me." "Yes, I did, 3 weeks ago. Here is a copy of the email, and here is a copy of the receipt." Then the store manager gave Richard a wilting stare. "So who have you got lined up to replace Bob? Have you been interviewing?"
I did not get this email. This is fake. No, I haven't been interviewing anyone. I guess Larry will have to cover until I can fill that position.
Bob says, "Yeah, good luck with that. Larry isn't even in this time zone. He's in Sturgis. And no, it is not fake. If you want, IT can verify that by checking your email history." Richard turned white. He realized he had no supervisors for the doc at all. The store manager asked Bob, "Is there any way we can get you to stick around?" "No thanks. I've already lined up for a new job, sorry. But you've got bigger problems than this." "Really? Like what?" Bob pulled out more copies of emails and handed them over. "I asked Richard repeatedly for his password to the scheduling app, several times. Can I jump on your computer for a second?" And the store manager turned his laptop to face Bob, and Bob logged into the scheduling app. "Okay, so the admin account is under Richard's job title. This is where we post a schedule for the crew. I used to do it for Frank because he wasn't a computer guy, but technically this falls under the assistant manager role. The login is assistant manager at. I'm logged in under my own account, but I can still see who's scheduled across the board. I just cannot edit it. I don't have the permissions. Here is the schedule for the warehouse crew for the next 2 weeks." He turned the laptop back around, and it's blank. There isn't anyone scheduled to work at all. Then Bob turned to Richard and told him, "Here is my keys, and here is my company phone. I am done. By the way, in accordance with this email from IT, I have factory reset the phone. Good luck." Bob left the office, and all the way out of the store he could hear the manager yelling at Richard. Apparently Richard had to go to the personnel file and Turn off the phone lines calling warehouse guys to come in at the last minute. And company policy was that if you were called in with less than 24 hours notice, it was time and a half. Many of the records were outdated, so if he reached the worker, he had to ask them if he had any of their co-workers' number. Once he got things straightened out a bit, he was shown the door. They brought a lead-hand then, assistant manager in from another store. Richard was fired for cause, denying him unemployment, and tagged with a do not rehire. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.